Yeah, we're good. We're good to go.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so Prabhuji, I'm putting the verse on the screen and then you may take it over from here.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, I can start.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yes.
So thank you very much for inviting me, giving me the opportunity to speak on the Africa platform, the daily Srimad Bhagavatam, reading and lecturing by different devotees. And today we continue with text 32. The chapter under study is Maharaj Parikshit cursed by a Brahmana boy, chapter 18 of the first canto. And the verse is on the screen. So I will do the invocation and pranam, and then I will read. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Jaiva Narotamam Deving Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udhiraye. Nasta Preshwa Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krantaraja Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. So I'll just read the verse myself. So 1:18:32, first canto, 18th chapter, again entitled Maharaj Parikshit cursed by a Brahmana boy, text 32. Tasya putro titechashvi viharan balako ribhakai ragyaghang prabitang tatam srutva tadredam abravit. Word meaning, Tasya, his, the sages, Putra, son, Ati, extremely, Tejasvi, powerful, Viharan, while playing, Baalakaha, the boy, Arbhakai, with boys who were all childish, Ragya, by the king, Agam, distress, Prapitam, made to have, Tatam, the father, Shrutva, by hearing, Tatra, then and there, Idam, this, Abravit, spoke. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The sage had a son who was very powerful, being a Brahmana's son. While he was playing with inexperienced boys, he heard of his father's distress, which was occasioned by the king. Then and there the boy spoke as follows. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Due to Maharaj Parikshit's good government, even a boy of tender age who was playing with other inexperienced boys could become as powerful as a qualified Brahmana. This boy was known as Shringi, and he achieved good training in Brahmacharya by his father so that he could be as powerful as a Brahmana. Even at that age, but because the age of Kali was seeking an opportunity to spoil the cultural heritage of the four orders of life, the inexperienced boy gave a chance for the age of Kali to enter into the field of Vedic culture. Hatred of the lower orders of life began from this Brahmana boy under the influence of the age of Kali, and thus cultural life began to dwindle day after day. The first victim of Brahminical injustice was Maharaj Parikshit, and thus the protection given by the king against the onslaught of Kali was slackened. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mayham Dadati Supatantikam. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shannavadi Paschatadesha Tarine. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. The sage had a son who was very powerful, being a Brahmana's son. While he was playing with inexperienced boys, he heard of his father's distress, which was occasioned by the king. Then and there, the boy spoke as follows. So this is a continuation. This katha, this episode, is the interesting mishap caused by Maharaj Parikshit. He entered the hermitage of Shamik Rishi and was inadvertently not aware that Shamika Rishi was in meditation, and he was himself under the onslaught of hunger and thirst, didn't have much of a patience, and a slight influence of the frequency of Raja and Tamogun. He actually had a momentary lapse in his impeccable behavior so far. And because of this momentary lapse in his impeccable behavior, on his way out, he picked up a snake, a dead snake, with his stick, and he placed it on the shoulder of Shamika Rishi. And then he left. But this was something that Parikshit Maharaj had not planned on doing. He was not in the habit of doing. And he had great regard and esteem for Brahminical culture. He had great regard and esteem for Mother Earth. He had great regard and esteem for cows, the Brahmanas, the bulls. So he was a perfect gentleman. He was a king. So therefore, when this happened, this mishap was caused, I think you have read it all over the 2 or 3 verses that preceded this verse. Prabhupada talks a lot about this is an arrangement of Krishna. So even if that may not be the case, hypothetically, that's not an arrangement of Krishna. This is what we would qualify as an accidental fall down. As an act of accidental fall down from grace or from graceful behavior. So Maharaj Parikshit, without deep consideration, without desire to cause malice, without desire to cause any harm to anyone, he did something like that. So then this boy Shringi, who was the son of Shamik Rishi, then he heard about this behavior of Parikshit Maharaj. And he happened to know that someone came in the ashram of his father, and he was sitting and doing his meditation, and he was disrespected by the king, who by this time had left that place. And when he had left that place, already, and this has also been discussed in the previous purport, he was already in deep regret. He was actually in a mood of repentance. And he was kind of cursing himself that, a lot of misfortune will befall him, and he, appropriately, he merit, he deserved that, something will happen to him and he lose everything. And he was very repentant. So I often write about this, and I often think about this. And I think this is a classic case of accidental fall down. If we don't take into consideration what Srila Prabhupada is putting in the purport, that this is arrangement of Krishna. And, similar things happened where there's a slight anger that takes over our our consciousness, even in the presence of great personalities, or being in an environment such as the environment of Vaikuntha. When the 4 Kumaras, they came to the platform wanting to go to see Lord Vishnu, they went through the 6 gates. And the 7th gate, these 2 doorkeepers, horizontally placed 2 sticks to say, where are you going, boys? So they got upset because they saw, well, this is Vaikuntha. Why is there dualities here? Why are there so many issues, with these persons? Why do they see as friends and enemies? Why do they see duality? Why do they see right and wrong? This is the atmosphere of Vaikuntha. So that's definitely also an arrangement of Krishna. But then we can discuss from so many different angles. This is the depth of understanding that sometimes the devotees enjoy discussing on Srimad Bhagavatam. So why did that happen there? So why did it happen here when Parikshit Maharaj put his life on the line to protect the cows, the brahmanas, and the bulls? And he was so powerful that the age of Kali had to take a back seat and wait for a while. And the age of Kali could not spread its full influence because of the good governance of Parikshit Maharaj. And in this purport, Prabhupada talks about, because of his good governance, even this Brahmana boy of tender age, he could become as powerful as a qualified Brahmana. So unless you have a good socio-political and cultural environment where we can foster, proper spiritual understanding, proper knowledge, it is not possible for actually people to grow spiritually. It may happen, by the will of providence or by the arrangement of Krishna. You may get 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, great personalities always, because that's the arrangement of Krishna, that we always have few devotees on the planet. But it becomes more and more rare. So it's not always possible to have great personalities when the environment is not nurturing and is not fostering the upliftment of the consciousness of individuals in a way that we can actually have very qualified personalities take birth. The environment of Kali is so degraded that it is not possible to have very, very powerful Brahmanas. And powerful Brahmanas are actually born in families after many, many years or cycles of the family, the couples, the Grihastha couples following strict rules of procreation, Garbhadhan Sanskar, one after the other. And if a couple follows Garbhadhan Sanskar, they have nice kids. And then those kids are born, when it comes to them entering Grihastha ashram, they have very strict rules, strict guidance, strict rituals, strict behavior. And then when they have kids, then you have very appropriately qualified brahmanas and personalities born. And then then they go on, and after many generations, then you have someone powerful maybe born in the family. There's just the Vedic rules. It's not that brahmanas are born because of birth, but because of qualification. But even when we look at it, if a Kshatriya king is married to a Kshatriya lady, all they want and pray and the practice is they have Kshatriya sons born, because they're concerned about, the culture that they protect will have someone who will protect that culture. So it's very interesting also that this may also lead to a sense of nepotism. In that very interesting verse, I think 22 of the Gita, Srila Prabhupada talks about this. I was very impressed by one beautiful lecture by Srila Prabhupada when Arjuna was complaining to Krishna, and he said, how am I likely to be in a position and be happy to kill my own people? It's just not possible for me to do that. And it's in text 1. Let me just get that verse. And then he says, not possible for me to kill my own people. So let me get that verse. I think it's 20. Yeah, it's 28. Arjuna Vacha, he said, Dristvevam Swachanam Krishna, Yuyutsum Sumupastitam, Sithandi Mama Ghatrani Mukham Chaparishushati. My dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. So in that how you can go to prabhupadvani.org, and on that verse, Prabhupada gives a very beautiful talk. And he actually talks about when Arjuna is talking about Swajanam Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, he extrapolates this, he expands this explanation, and he implies that this is actually nepotism. Why is he concerned about his own people? So like if a Kshatriya couple or a Brahmana couple want to have children that are born of the same nature so that they can take up the lead of the service that they have. You know, Prabhupada talks about this in this verse, it's nepotism. Because, you know, why are you so sympathetic and have compassion for the soldiers of the opposite party forcing the imminent death? And while he was so thinking, he said his limbs were quivering. So I think devotees should listen to that Prabhupada tape. It's a very nice one. So here we see that the Prabhupada is talking about this boy could have become a powerful, qualified Brahmana. So it begs the question, does that mean that Brahmanas are born of Brahmanas? Kshatriyas are born of Kshatriyas? Does that mean that Varnashram system is not scientific? It is by birth? Of course not. Chaturvarnam Ashishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasa. It is according to guna, quality, and also according to karma. You know, you can have, and this is famous text, chapter 4, text 9, and Srila Prabhupada also very clarified these points, that one may be born in a Brahmana or in a Kshatriya or a such and such family, but he may not have the quality. So do we qualify? And Prabhupada qualifies and uses a term, which is a very Vedic term, the Brahma Bandhu term, Brahma Bandhu. So Brahma Bandhu is one who may be born in the family of a Brahmana, but he doesn't have the necessary qualification. He does not have the necessary ability, necessary qualification, aptitude, and he's not influenced by the right guna, because the quality of a Brahmana is described in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, text 42, right? Samodhamatapa saucham, shanti marjamam evacha, jnanam vijnanam sahitam brahma karma svabhavacha. So the peacefulness, self-control. So this boy, does he have peacefulness? No. Of course, he's a child. So it makes the situation a little bit more complex to actually analyze. He has enough tejas. And in this verse, he's saying that he has enough tejas. He has enough power to give a curse that's going to fructify. Tasya putro titejashvi. Powerful. He has enough tejas that he will utter some words after taking water from the river and doing achman, that the words will have an impact. So yes, the power is there, but does he have the control? Does he have the sama? No. Does he have an equanimity of mind? No. Does he have dhamma? Self-control. He may have had austerity. He may have had purity. He may have other qualities, but certainly he doesn't seem to have shantim, tolerance. He doesn't have shantim, and he doesn't have very clear intelligence. Why? Because he should have gone and inquired rather than hearing from second person and making a judgment and then acting powerfully on that judgment because he could afford to act. So the sage had a son who was very powerful, right, being a Brahmana's son. And while he was playing with inexperienced boys, he heard of his father's distress. So he was a playful child. He was only a young boy, but he dared to think himself qualified to dish out such incredible word of anger and word of curse to the king. So many things to take from this beautiful pastime. So then this boy was known as Shringi, and he achieved good training in brahmacharya. So another principle is the Varnashrama culture, which is a scientific culture. It actually thrives on proper culture. What culture? Culture and what we call ashrama culture. Varnashrama, yes, but ashrama. First, we have to have ashrama culture, which means that couples, families, they have to be brought up in an environment where they foster this kind of value system. And Srila Prabhupada talks about his own childhood. And he said, I was fortunate, that his father taught him Krishna conscious behavior, taught him Krishna conscious practices right from a younger age. And those were very valuable things for Srila Prabhupada, that he was taught to actually learn the principles of deity worship, doing festivals, playing music, offering food right from the young age. Now, where does these things happen? Where can we do these things? Naturally, in the environment, in the culture, right? Where we're growing up. If you are growing up nicely, surrounded by deity, prasadam, kirtan, and we have the opportunity to think about Krishna right from the young age, because there's always, if you want to learn something, say if you had an opportunity to learn something, what is the right age to start? Is it 5 or 55 or 50? What's a good age to start to learn something? Obviously at the age of 5, because at the age of 5, your tendencies, your psychological development, your mindset, your ability, they're all fresh. And actually you can be molded into somebody right from the young age. Prahlad Maharaj started his spiritual life, Komara Acharit Pragya, right from the young age. Dhruva Maharaj, he had a very intense Kshatriya spirit. He was upset. He was angry with his mother, Surichi, who actually did not allow him to sit on the lap of his father. And he wanted to take revenge. He actually wanted to have something even bigger than the father was sitting on. And his father, Maharaj Uttanapad, was son of Swayambhuva Manu. And he wanted to have even better than Swayambhuva Manu, even better than Lord Brahma. So there he had that intense desire. So that's a very interesting example when he met Narad Muni. Narad Muni told him, you can get an opportunity to practice yoga and attain the mercy of Lord Narayan at a later age. But if you try now, this is too difficult for you. It's better that you go home. Why are you so upset? Honor and dishonor comes and goes, and you will forget about it. You're a child, you should spend your time in krida, in playing. And then Dhruva Maharaj, he was almost, and he said some very strong words to Narad Muni. He said, please do not talk to me about these kind of Brahminical things. He said, I'm a Kshatriya. I have that spirit. I don't like what I suffered. And he said, I definitely want to be able to get the blessings I want. So either you show me, please show me. He didn't actually say either you show me. He said, please show me what is the best way for me to achieve the favor of Lord Hari. So then Narad Muni initiated him into the process of devotional service through meditation, because that was the age then. And he gave him also the mantra Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And he told him, gave him instructions where to go to practice his meditation in Madhuvan, yeah, which was also even then famous place of pilgrimage. So there you have Dhruva Tila, where Dhruva Maharaj, he went and he did this wonderful practice of meditation. And Narad Muni gave him also the mantra, also gave him the process of deity worship. He told him, you can actually create a small deity, and with whatever means available, you can offer fruits and flowers, and whatever means of sustenance that you will utilize, and offer them to the Lord. Then he also gave him the process of meditation in the heart, how to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He gave him a full description of Lord Vishnu, so he knows what to meditate upon. So because he was a young boy and he had that very strong Kshatriya spirit of tenacity, of virya, of tejas, he actually succeeded. He was a young boy. Prahlad Maharaj, the same thing, he succeeded. So we have two wonderful examples of great personalities, and we have one other example of a not very nice personality here, Shringi, in Srimad Bhagavatam. Shringi, he's overstepped. He overstepped his privilege. Because of what? Because of the pride that he had. So this boy was known as Shringi, and he achieved good training in brahmacharya by his father so that he could be as powerful as a brahmana, even at that age. So yes, he had the power, but did he have the samaha? No. Did he have the dhamma, the self-control? No. Did he have the intelligence to analyze everything carefully? No. He had the tejas. He had the power. Why? Because Prabhupada says, but because the age of Kali was seeking an opportunity to spoil the cultural heritage of the four orders of life. Very powerful words used in this sentence by Srila Prabhupada. To spoil the cultural heritage of the four orders of life. The four orders of life means actually what? The social orders or the Varna orders? Both. So the age of Kali was seeking an opportunity to mess the cultural heritage. So when Prabhupada started the Krishna consciousness movement, he was trying to implant a spiritual culture, not so much a social, conventional, varnashram or anthropological change in society. He wanted to actually make people hear, because people were not actually qualified, nor people were seeking through meditation or jnana or fruitive karma kanda, religious rituals to achieve any kind of perfection. But Prabhupada knew, even in the Bhagavad Gita, you can read in the text 13, I think it's 30, where Krishna says that no one is actually seeking any of these things in the age of Kali. So because no one is seeking in the age of Kali, there's one thing that becomes very important. And he said that is a process of hearing. If someone can just hear, right? If someone can simply just hear, one can become qualified by the process of hearing. Let me get that verse and I read it to you. It's a beautiful verse. It impressed me a lot. Lately, I was reading again the chapter 13. So that verse is here. So he says, it's text 22. He says, Anyata evam ajanantam krutvan vebhyam upasate tepi chatitarantyeva mrityun shruti parayana. So in this verse, the preceding verse is actually, let me read the translation of the preceding verse, which is 25. It said, some perceive the super soul within themselves through meditation, others through the cultivation of knowledge, and still others through working with fruitive desires. But then he says, again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, those not conversant in spiritual knowledge, how do we, if we are not conversant in spiritual knowledge, how do we begin to worship the Supreme Person? We're not yogis. We're not like Dhruva Maharaj wanting to get something and therefore go to the forest and find out Lord Krishna. We're not doing that. We are not actually have the ability to study. It's text 26. Yeah. Okay, yeah, right, this one, yeah. Yeah, thank you. So he said, not conversant in spiritual knowledge. I mean, when Prabhupada went to America, how were people conversant in spiritual knowledge? There's no culture, because the cultural heritage, Prabhupada speaks in this verse, and he said the cultural heritage of the four orders of life, right, has been spoiled or was being spoiled by the age of Kali. So when we read this verse, he said, again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, which is the general populace in age of Kali, right? But begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others. So this is a very, very powerful statement, because simply by hearing from others, in the age of Kali, we start the process of devotional service. This is a very interesting point. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. So technically, the cultural heritage helps. But Srila Prabhupada, he knew very well that there's no cultural heritage in the society presently. There is no cultural heritage in the society presently. So how is it possible for everyone to actually take to the pursuit of Krishna Bhakti or Krishna consciousness? So Prabhupada has one and only one tool, that they could hear. So he went to the West with the Mahamantra so they can hear. He went to the West with SRIMAD Bhagavatam and his knowledge of the Vedic culture, because he was like, Prabhupada was like a Veda Rishi, very powerful personality, so they could hear from him. And because if they have a tendency to want to hear from authorities like him, they will transcend the path of birth and death. So yeah, so the cultural heritage is destroyed. Prabhupada did not care so much. And Prabhupada did say at one point that, you know, I didn't try to establish Varnashram, but it didn't hamper. It did not cause any disruption in his ability to propagate the Krishna consciousness movement. Because there, Bhagavad Gita saying here, this is chapter 13, Nature and Joy and Consciousness. And in the text 26, it is saying that actually if someone can just hear. So the process of Krishna consciousness, the Navavida Bhakti, the process starts with hearing, Shravanam. If we can just hear, everything can start from there. Spiritual culture can be established. And hopefully the spiritual cultural heritage also can be established. Now, what is a need, therefore, if we analyze it? What is a need, therefore, to have a spiritual, cultural Varnashram system or established Devi Varnashram or whichever? If we can just chant, if we can just get people to hear, there is really, in fact, there is really no need, if you look at it like this. But if you want to have a universal application of Krishna consciousness, then the cultural side of establishing the Varnashram is very important, because that has been spoiled by Kali. But because of the age of Kali was seeking an opportunity to spoil the cultural heritage of the four orders of life, the inexperienced boy gave a chance for the age of Kali to enter into the field of Vedic culture. So what did it do? It spoiled the culture. What is a culture? Culture is a set of values and systems that dictates a certain kind of behavior, parlance, you know, all kinds of cultural values between individuals in a society. So it actually spoiled the culture, the Vedic culture. And like everyone says, and it is a common saying, that the fish rots from the head. So, you know, if some individuals in society cause some problems or some difficulty for A or B or C, and he's just a, person working in a government office, or he's working in a, in a factory, or he's just a simple person, he's earning his livelihood. He does a few bad things. It doesn't, okay, in the long run, everyone does bad things, it all adds up and it spoils society. But when someone in a position of power, he does something, massively wrong, and his behavior is hugely out of sync and improper, he can actually cause a lot of problems. So Prabhupada is taking that point, that because the age of Kali was seeking an opportunity to spoil the cultural heritage of the followers of life, the inexperienced boy gave a chance for the age of Kali to enter into the field of Vedic culture. So what is Vedic culture? Vedic culture is a collaboration of the rulers and brahmanas to establish what? To establish protection. Protection of women and children, protection of brahmanas, protection of cows, protection of elderly people. It is all based on protection. So here, now you destroy the person who is the arm, who is protecting. Prabhupada gives the example, the Kshatriyas are the arm of society. What does that mean? It means that if someone wants to hit you, or someone wants to hurt you, right? And someone wants to threaten to hurt you, how are you going to protect? You're going to protect with your arms. First of all, you protect with your arms. So the Kshatriyas, they are the arm of society because they protect everyone from harm. Kshatriyate. So that's their principle, the behavior or the responsibility of a Kshatriya is to protect. So now the Brahmana boy is now, by his curse, is removing one of the most glorified, one of the most wonderful person who was in charge of the Vedic culture and its protection by giving this curse. So Prabhupada says, therefore, hatred of the lower orders of life began from this Brahmana boy under the influence of Kali. So who is to be blamed? The Brahmana boy is to be blamed, or is it the influence of Kali is to be blamed? It is the influence of Kali, because time is ultimately a more powerful controller. Right? Because that is happening because of the age of Kali. Similar question was asked from the bull, the Dharma, by Bharat Parikshit. When the bull was being mistreated, then Bharat Parikshit asked the bull, who is doing this to you? And who is doing this to the cow? And he answered very philosophically. He said, will of providence, arrangement of God, nature, this, that. And obviously the person who was doing this was Kali. But he did not point out to Kali. Because over and above what is apparent, there's always the plan of the Lord. There's always the direct plan of the Lord, or the external plan of the Lord according to time. According to time, which is Kala. So because of the age of Kali had begun and entered into the field of Vedic culture, this is under the influence of Kali, this Brahmana boy lost his composure, did not act according to his proper etiquette, and thus cultural life began to dwindle day after day. That's a very heavy statement by Srila Prabhupada, intense statement. That hatred of the lower orders of life began from this Brahmana boy. Why? Because you will see later on how Srila Prabhupada explains that this Brahmana boy went on ranting on and on about his high status and how these people would enter into the house like a dog and then not show respect to the Brahmanas. So there's that amount of pride. So we can also see that if you read Srimad Bhagavatam, the pastimes of Yudhishthira Maharaj in the first canto, where Yudhishthira Maharaj actually makes arrangement to actually go and take Vanaprastha and prepare to leave the world. There's also a very interesting pastime there, where the descriptions is that Parikshit Maharaj could see that certain kind of strife. He could see certain kind of behavior from families, within families. He could see certain kinds of behavior of animals. He could see certain ill omens in the sky. He can see the change in the countenance even of the trees and all the plants, of the birds, the way they were chirping. He could see so much things going on, and he felt something wrong. And then come Arjuna and tells him that the Lord has left the planet. Good. So then he realizes it's time to leave. So that was before our Parikshit Maharaj here was enthroned. He could see those. So when Parikshit Maharaj was put on the throne, he actually stopped the age of Kali from progressing. Those signs that was visible to Yudhishthira Maharaj was removed, was actually postponed by the powerful governance and government of Maharaj Parikshit under his care. But we see that Kali is pushing and pushing, and with the effect of time, and therefore this cultural life now start to dwindle. The fish, the whole Vedic culture, which is the Brahmanas, its head starting to rot. So then the first victim of Brahminical injustice was actually the most powerful person on the earth, because strategically, Kali is a big strategist. If Kali wants to ruin any semblance of Vedic culture, it actually starts to ruin those who are the guardian of the Vedic culture. The teachers, the Brahmanas, they are teachers. They need protection. So if you remove the protection, you can actually ruin and cause ruination to all the other orders. So sometimes we think, yes, the Brahman is very important, but equally important are the Kshatriyas. Beautiful discussion between Kardama Muni and Swayambhuva Manu, where they both glorify each other, saying the combination of their two combining together. Because good governance and good advice based on sound theological principles, which is presented by the Brahmanas, can actually make the spiritual culture progress. So the first victim of Brahminical injustice was here Maharaj Parikshit, and thus the protection given by the king against the onslaught of Kali was slackened. And from there on, degradation piled up against degradation, and then we are not left with much chance of practicing, the Vedic culture in its entirety. So this is right, the setting for the onslaught of Kali, and it is being precipitated by this young, arrogant Brahmana boy called Shringi. Without understanding, he cursed Maharaj Parikshit. So, degradation of Vedic culture. First is degradation of womanhood, family, and traditions, and the neglect of family and practice of traditions and rituals. This is explained by Arjuna in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Then you have the full degradation, the age of Kali. Well, then maintenance of the body become a wholesale economic exploitation of individual. We don't simply maintain our body and soul together and live peacefully. Actually, the whole principle of work to nourish your body, which is important for everyone, becomes magnified into huge scheme of economic exploitation by encouraging consumerism and then using labor not simply to feed your body and maintain body and soul and practice spiritual life, but becomes enslavement and labor for enrichment, which is another. And then not just that the father has to work and maintain the family, then every single individual in the family has to work. I remember when I was a young child, My father was a sole breadwinner, and we were 8 in our family. Okay, we were keeping cows, and my sisters, my brothers were helping. But my father was the one who was working. And then, it wasn't an anxiety. Some anxiety were there because things were economically not together. But when everyone was living peacefully, the best we can. But now if you look at the situation, the economic exploitation of every individual is so much ingrained into this culture where I give you an example. A very close family friend of mine. The lady works, have a big salary. And the husband works, has a three-figure salary. And they have one son and one daughter. The son works, and he has a two-figure salary. So they get in the house about 200,000 rupees a month. And then there's one daughter. One daughter. They're pushing that daughter to finish her degree and a master's so she can also earn. So economic exploitation of everyone is ingrained in our culture. Do you think that with 200,000 rupees a month, you could not maintain that girl and marry her off nicely to a nice family where she can be a housewife? And I'm not saying in any derogatory fashion, and she could actually, help her husband to bring up nice family, nice children who are cared for and practice spiritual life. No. I mean, there's so much excess money in that house that they have to keep buying cars every 3-4 years to use the money up. And this is the degradation. So this economic exploitation, this consumerism, a labor for enrichment, and then the whole anthropology, the social society, the social situation is all spoiled. The social degradation, economic degradation, family values are destroyed, just as Arjuna predicted. Right? Adharma vibhavat Krishna pradushanti kulastriya, degradation of womanhood, degradation, varna shankara. I mean, if a family that's bringing so much money, that daughter is considered a liability, then she is a varna shankara, no matter how much you love her. Varna shankara means unwanted child, because the mother and father, despite having an income, do not want to maintain her. It's varna shankara, so she's unwanted. That's why it says, prepare yourself, go to work. I had 5 sisters, they did not work. So it's a good dose of thinking required here. So let's look at this. Let's look at this for what it is. This degradation of womanhood, degradation of family, degradation of tradition, neglect of cows and children and women and old people. So no one is preparing for spiritual rejuvenation or a better spiritual life in our next birth, because the old people are left for themselves to fend for themselves. So this goes on, but it started right here. When those who are supposed to lead society and create a structure, which is called the Devi Varnashram, where everyone is working for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu, and working what? Serving. One dharma, serving the Lord, and everyone will be maintained. So this degradation is started there. And look what we have. We have a situation where you have a small family unit when one nice young daughter is considered a burden. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we will open up the discussions. I know the devotees always have a lot of questions, and I'm happy to have my senior friend Srivas Prabhu. They are listening, and I want to recognize Srivas Prabhu, Hari Chakra Prabhu, and Rasavan Prabhu is there. So thank you so much. And obviously Shalika Prabhu, hopefully he's here, and my friend Sahadev. So thank you, Prabhuji. So
Hare
anyone
Krishna.
wants ask
Thank
any
you.
questions or
Hare
open up?
Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the
Thank
beautiful
you.
class. I'm here with you. I'm hearing everything you're saying. I'm multitasking. I don't want to distract the
You
class.
practically have two lives. You have a virtual life and a real life. I know you.
Okay, Prabhuji, thank you so much for the wonderful class. Lots of insights, and I personally have lots of questions for you. But Oladimeji, please, you may unmute and go ahead and ask your question or make your comment. Please unmute.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Is it possible to turn on your camera? Is it possible?
Oh,
If it's not possible, it's okay. But if it's possible, we would like to see your lotus face.
yeah, and Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah,
Yes, go
thank
on.
you very much for the lovely class today, and I love the fact that you ended the lecture based on my question regarding the degradation of the society, spiritual activity. Everything is being destroyed by Kali. My question is in two parts. The first one is, at what point will a devotee accept that he has fallen from the level of spirituality? When devotee falls, when guru falls, at what point can devotee accept, whether it's been obvious to people around him, other devotee, guru, probably maybe within him, at what point can a devotee consider himself to be a fallen soul? That's number one. The second question is for the guru part, our leaders that we are looking up to, and unfortunately, Maya, Kali got over them, and we end up labeling them to be a fallen soul. What happens? My question now is, what happens to their devotional service?
You mean the devotional service of the leaders or those who think that everyone is
of the leaders? What
Okay.
happens to their devotional service when we label them to be a fallen one? What happens to them further? Can't they continue what they do in the devotional realm? So I just want clarification on the two aspects.
Okay, thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Nice question. So at what point do we consider, like a devotee, that his level of spirituality is actually down? And the answer to that question is very simple. Very simple. It's when he forgets Krishna. When someone forgets Krishna, then actually this is the worst thing that can happen to anyone. And let us look at a very beautiful pastime. We've been studying this pastime lately with my group of students who study Bhagavatam with us. When the Char Kumaras, they went to the seventh gate of Vaikuntha, and they uttered these words where they said to Jai and Vijay, look, if you have duality in your heart and you see these kind of things, then you should go to a place when there are these three things, Kama, Krodha, Lobha. You don't have a place here, so you should start your journey down. But then Jai and Vijay, immediately they started repenting and they said, yes, we've caused an offense at your lotus feet. We really beg pardon. We apologize. But you know what Jai and Vijay said? He said, but whatever will be our situation in the next episodes to follow, you actually please, out of your compassion and kindness, make sure that we never forget the Lord. So what is the two most important symptoms of a devotee? That you always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. So someone may be in any situation, and the situation can be very compromising sometimes. But if that person is remembering Krishna, then he is not fallen. When he forgets Krishna, then he's fallen. That's very simple to understand that. So on the other sense of when we start to look at the devotees, our leaders are fallen, it's a very interesting point that we always discuss. We always discuss about, in relationship to this, we always discuss about the verse 930, apiche sudracharo bhajate mamananya, right? That if someone is fallen, then if he has a resolute determination to actually practice Krishna consciousness, he's not fallen. But the most interesting part of that, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, is looking at the next verse that follows the verse 930 about the state of someone who's fallen. And the verse goes 931, Shipran bhavati dharmatma. So in the verse 930, it says that if someone has committed an abominable act, apiche sudaracharo bhajate mamananya bhaksadure, so on. And he said, but he is resolute in his consciousness, in his mind, in his thinking, to actually practice devotional service and be determined to follow his path, which means that he's thinking of Krishna to the best of his ability. And if a person keeps thinking about Krishna, how can we consider fallen? You know who is considered fallen? It goes in the next verse. Go down to the next verse, Sahadev. Right? Go down to the next verse. Right. And that verse, what does it say? There it says that someone who considers, right, that he is still resolutely determined to devotional service, he's a sadhu reva samantavya, he's saintly. But this verse, it starts with Shipran bhavati dharmatma. He quickly becomes righteous. Who quickly becomes righteous? There's two ways to look at it. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur have another way of looking at this. He says, Shipran bhavati dharmatma, shashwat sanchim nigachati. In the previous verse, the person who is fallen, but he is resolute to pursue his spiritual life, is considered the sadhu. But in this verse, why does Krishna say he becomes a dharmatma, when already Krishna said he's already a sadhu? But here it is related to the person who sees the person as sadhu. He becomes dharmatma. So Shipran bhavati dharmatma, shashwat santim nigachati, konteya pratijanime name bhakta pranashati. So he said, you should see, Arjuna, that my devotee does not perish. In fact, those who know that my devotee, despite his problems, do not perish, those who see that my devotees, despite his problems, do not perish, those people become dharmatma. So look at it in a wholesale way. Do we really want to be looking at who is fallen or who isn't fallen? When Krishna says, if you see those who are practicing and remembering Krishna as being saintly, you will become dharmatma. I will become dharmatma. We will become reformed. We will become great soul, because we see those people engage in Krishna consciousness. Those people still remembering Krishna. So the two questions you did very ties up nicely, because who is actually the misfortunate person? One who forgets Krishna. So despite being in a situation that is not favorable, sometimes because of certain mishaps, certain incident with the modes of material nature, someone may fall from grace, someone may fall from his high position. But if that person
frozen for a moment, he'll be back. We'll wait for a short while to see if Prabhuji will be able to come back.
Krishna Pito Krishna Dana Pran. Krishna Mato Krishna Pito Krishna Dana Pran. Krishna
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, you may have to unmute your mic.
Yeah. Now this
Yeah.
is something
Thank you.
happening every day when I give class. After
Right.
1 hour, it just goes for a little while, you know.
Okay.
I'm wondering how does Salika keep going 24 hours on the net without being disrupted? Yeah.
Maybe
So
you,
I
if
hope
you
this
speak to
Prabhu
him,
is here.
and
I try to answer the question the best I can. So, okay. Anyone else? Does that satisfy you?
Yes, Prabhu, but you are on the point of mentioning something, summarizing it in a particular way. I don't know.
Yes, what I summarized is that someone may be in a fallen condition. Being in the material world, we all fallen condition, but if one is trying his utmost despite his negative credentials or his negative behaviors, he's trying to remember Krishna and is doing his best he can. He cannot be considered fallen. He may be slightly in a different position, maybe on a position of authority, this and that. That's a different matter. But as an individual soul, servant of Krishna, he cannot be considered fallen. Not from Krishna's angle. Because Krishna says, Name Bhakta Pranashyati. So that's my summary. Srivas Prabhu, you want to add something to this?
Hare Krishna, Advaita Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that beautiful class. What can I add? I can only take away.
You're so kind.
Thank you so much.
I think we have.
Thank you.
It's like we have to protect ourselves because Kali is making is weaving a very nice net to entrap us. So do we take shelter of Krishna and his words, or do we listen to our own mind and speculate as to what is what and who is who? Or do we take shelter of Krishna and understand from basics of Krishna Bhakti that one is thinking of Krishna, he's trying to practice devotional service, he's doing his utmost not to forget Krishna, and he may have had some misfortune, but he is carrying on. Krishna says he is Dharmatma. So I think that I conclude my comments on that, Oladijme Prabhu. Okay, so any other question? I hope it satisfies you. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I told you I have lots of questions.
Go on.
What I'm about to ask is actually not one of my questions. It's just a follow-up to Oladimeji's wonderful question. And that is, he was asking about a fall down of a devotee. And your answer was simply, when one forgets about Krishna, then he's fallen. So the principal rule is never forget Krishna, always remember Krishna.
Yes.
I think that even though that is the case, but there is also a clause, and the clause is that we have to remember Krishna in a favorable manner, because there were demons like Kamsa who were always remembering Krishna, but not in a very favorable way. So if one remembers Krishna in an unfavorable way, does that also make such a person non-fallen person?
Well, the answer to that is in the 7th canto. Can't get the reference, haven't read it for quite a while. But if you look at Hiranyakashipu and you look at Kamsa, they were unfavorably disposed towards Krishna. But then they had asked this blessing from the Kumaras that no matter what, we don't forget Krishna. So ultimately, even if ultimately, even unfavorably, if it is related to Krishna, they'll get purified. They'll come round. It's quite incredible. Yes, but we are not ex-associates of the Supreme Lord. We are not Jai Vijay from Vaikuntha. We should actually practice the rules and be not pratikul, but anukul. We should be favorably disposed towards Krishna. So one will be purified. Now, if someone is overtly trying to hurt Krishna or trying to hurl insult at Krishna or trying to disrupt the Krishna consciousness movement by being inimical towards the sampradaya, inimical towards the parampara, inimical towards the temples, inimical towards Prabhupada mission, then that is not very nice. But if someone is on a personal level having difficulty and having problems, even though he may be a leader and he may be step aside, to nurse his own difficulties back to proper Krishna conscious health, persons like that cannot be condemned. But if they forget Krishna, even they remember Krishna even to a small amount, and they make some endeavors, they have a lot of regret, they may have a lot of repentance, then they cannot be condemned.
Well, thank you so much, Prabhuji. I mean, that affirms the statement that even if one grudgingly mentions the name Krishna, he still gets benefit. So thank you for the answer. But I have a question, and the question is, you see, we have lots of Krishna's pastimes made into movies. And one of such amazing movies is the Vishnu Puran. Now, the DVD of the Vishnu Puran, the artists themselves write on the back that this is ancient Indian mythology. So there are so many things said in our scriptures that when you tell somebody of today, all they're going to conclude is that it's mythology, because they cannot seem to think how that could be possible. But for us as devotees, we know it's not myth. We know it's real. But to explain it to others that it's not myth, it's real. I'm trying to get your advice or guide as to how to approach situations like that. And that is one, we are reading about Maharaj Parikshit and how he picked this dead snake and then put it on the shoulder of Shamaka Rishi. And we know that the rarest thing to come across in this world is to find a dead snake. It's very, very rare to find a dead snake. For some reason, when snakes are about to die, they know that they're about to die, and they hide. They hide their bodies. So, of course, we are accepting that this is Krishna's intervention. Krishna knew. Krishna had actually planned that these things should happen. Now, this Shringi, who is an inexperienced Brahmin son, cursed Maharaj Parikshit. In our day-to-day activity, when the president says that no flight from US should go to Mauritius, he just said it, and it will happen. And it happens because there are some people making sure that no flight flies from US to Mauritius. Now, when someone curses, who listens to the curse and who makes sure that what has been pronounced happens?
Okay.
As for this Shringi cursing Maharaj Parikshit, who made it happen? That's what I want to know.
Okay, thank you. Nice question. The first part of the question about the mythology is, just remind me about the second question in a minute because I might forget. So the first part of the question about the mythology, this is the doing of Western civilization upon Vedic culture. They started with going on and on about the Aryan Vedic theory, that the Sanskrit language and the culture of worship as it is known in India was brought from some Aryan civilization. So the Aryan Vedic theory of invasion of India was brought in by the colonizers, because when actually they visited India and they saw the rich cultural heritage, India had a school system that was absolutely fantastic. When they realized that, and that the Vedic culture was way ahead, they brought that in. And then they tried to destroy all the archaeological and the rich cultural heritage of temples. So that is actually the demonic work of Western civilization. And now it has been taken on by Indian intellectuals who actually savor, criticism against Vedic culture as part of their cultural heritage. And you have a lot of demonic people who actually identify with Western civilization. Now, where did that start? That start from the head. That start from the demonic mentality of these people to look down upon the Vedic culture, which are considered backward because they are actually, cow killers, and they have that demonic mentality. So then you have to establish the credentials of Vedic culture. And one of the things I personally do is I study the Mahabharata the best I can. And there's so many informations now that can prove that as a historical book, the Mahabharata is the most precise book in the universe, in the world, as to what happened 6, 7, 10,000 years up to 5,000 years. That history of 7, 8 generations of kings that is narrated in the Mahabharata by Srila Vyasadeva is so precise. You can actually say exactly what time such and such incident happened, what day, on what tithi, whether it was Dvitiya, or it was Tritiya, it was on a Chaturdasi, it was this time, and what was the constellation. So it is so precise that it cannot be mythology. So I always explain it like that. And I have a lot of information on that. So you can go by that, for example. And you can say this is not mythology.
Yeah, I accept that, but the issue is the very people who are custodians of this culture, they themselves are saying it that it's mythology.
Yes, but then it doesn't matter
That's the problem.
who is saying. Yes, it doesn't matter who is saying. Like I already told you, the Indian intellectual, the Vedic, the people who from India who supposed to be the custodian, the intellectuals supposed to be, they actually deride. They actually call murtis idols. They don't call them deity. They actually call history, itihas as mythology. So you have to counteract them. But there is an awakening because of Srila Prabhupada, preaching in the West and bringing so many people to value the Vedic culture. There is an awakening going on. And this is the value of the Sankirtan movement. So by spiritual reawakening, people feeling better about spiritual culture, they will feel better about the social and cultural heritage of Vedic India. I don't think we can go more on that because there's no definitive way you can do it. So I don't hold an answer that will solve this puzzle that you're bringing in. So the second question was, I told you I'll forget.
Let me see here.
I hope you have written it.
I think the second question was who causes the curses?
Okay.
Who makes it happen?
Okay, I had asked that question to my spiritual master. I said, how come someone pronounces a curse and it happens? So what is this cause and effect thing? And he said, everything that has to happen is in the causal ocean, which get manifested into the modes of nature. So the causal ocean has the nimitta karana, the immediate, and also the subsequent cause of all things. So basically, and he explained to me, like, you have wired your house to have light bulbs. So then when your house is wired to connected to the electricity board, and you press a switch, the lights come in because it is connected. So the connection is with the causal ocean, and the Brahmanas are able to flip that switch that causes things to happen that was meant to happen. Those who have the ability to flip that switch. So that was his explanation to me. He said, so therefore, things that are meant to happen because are actually done not by me and you, they are done by Prakriti, material nature, right? And the soul is just a witness. So the Prakriti, which evolves from the causal ocean, so to speak, in terms of manifestation, Adideva, Adibhuta, Adiyagya, with the triangular system of these three agencies controlling and doing everything. Someone has to flip the switch in it. And those curses are like flipping the switch. Just like the desire of the Lord was to actually send Jai and Vijay to this material world so that he can have sporting pastimes with them. But then he made nimitta karana, a secondary condition, so that there is an incident. So this is actually how we have to see it as devotees. I cannot explain more than what I've heard from my spiritual master.
Well, Prabhuji, if that is the case, then I think it's not just Brahmins alone, because like my material roots in Africa, we don't have these systematic Brahmins there, but they curse, and they do happen.
Yes, it will happen.
Yeah.
Yes, the curse will happen because it is meant by, because the curse is also pronounced under the influence of modes of nature. So who is really doing? The curse is doing, the Brahmana is doing, or modes of nature doing? That's a question. Does the pronouncement of the Brahmana make things happen, or is it material nature?
I'll say the modes of nature, but
Right.
The modes of nature is also working under the control of the Supreme Lord.
Right. So ultimately,
yeah.
it is and the control of the Supreme Lord in the material world is a time factor.
Yeah.
It is a time factor. So ultimately, it is a time factor. The time has happened for something. Modes of material nature will use consciousness behind, right? And therefore, things get blamed on the consciousness, but it's actually modes of nature doing it. But because the modes of nature will not act without the interference of, because everything is happening through the combination of the two. I will read you a verse. Just give me a minute. So I will read a beautiful verse that it says, one who understands the philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interaction of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. So here it explains that everything is happening because of the association of the person who occupies the kshetra and the modes of nature. So he said, know that whatever you see in existence, both the moving and non-moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field of activities. So yes, because it is a combination of the knower of activities, which means the soul, and the field of activities, which means the body. This is Srimad Bhagavad Gita 13:27. So therefore, you tend to think that it is the knower who is doing it, which is the soul. But actually, it's the body is doing it, which is a Prakriti. Because then Krishna says that actually, right, one who sees the super soul, then he says that one who sees that actually Prakriti is doing all the activities, right? And it is not the soul he actually sees. So basically, it is the work of Prakriti, and we tend to forget that. Okay, let me read that. It said, one who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which means Prakriti, which is created of material nature, which is Prakriti, and sees that the self does nothing, actually sees. So who is doing? It is a domain of Prakriti.
Well,
okay?
yeah.
So that is 1339, 1330. Okay, let's go on to the next question. I hope I've satisfied your inquiries.
You were thank you. You were talking about the destruction of culture and tradition, and in today's world, when we talk about the family, it's mostly talking about nuclear family. That is father, mother, and kids, children. That's it. That's the end of the family. But we know this is not a very healthy way of living. And when we live a real communal life, a real cultural life, where the family is an extended family, then we have community. And when we have community with such extended family, we were discussing this on this platform some time ago, that like some of us when we were growing up, we may have distant relatives. They may not even be blood related biologically. But when an adult sees a younger child doing something improper, the adult can discipline the child.
Yes, yes.
And the parents of the child will actually appreciate the person who disciplined the child, his child. Now, when we come to this point, we all know the dangers of offending. We all know the dangers of offending. So you rightly said that when someone is doing something to hurt Srila Prabhupada's movement, then somebody may say something. But if it is his personal shortcomings, then we have to be very careful, which is true. But at what point and at what time does one, knowing that what this person is doing can be injurious to himself or to herself, and as a family member comes in to offer support in the form of maybe advice or even awareness that, hey, brother, hey, sister, where you're going is not safe for you. Now, to me, it has become a problem in our world of ISKCON because it is a fact that one should be very much concerned about offending. And because of this grave concern, we oftentimes overlook shortcomings of devotees when we know that if we said something to that person, it could have saved the person. But for the sake of not committing offense, everybody sits aloof.
Yes.
So what do we do? What do we do in such a situation if we truly want to establish community as Krishna established in the Varnashram system, where everybody takes care of each other? How do we do that, Prabhuji?
Yes, very interesting question. Actually, it's kind of hard to make a definitive answer to that because, like we see, it's a degradation of the culture, of the Vedic culture that brings all of this. If the degradation of, like you said, if a child is doing something not nice in a village, some other uncle will say, hey, what are you doing? You go back home, otherwise I'll slap you, right? And if you can really understand, it requires a village to bring a child. That is a general saying. It requires a village to bring a child properly, because he will learn to behave properly. His actions are under scrutiny, so on and so forth. Now, therefore, we don't have that culture. Even in our Krishna consciousness movement, we are, there was a paper that was written, I think the Communications Journal, that are we trying, Prabhupada transplanted, did he transplant the Vedic culture, or did he actually push Krishna consciousness? Krishna consciousness in itself is not Vedic culture. It is the essence of Vedic culture, yes, but there's so many other things. Just like he tries to give us the fruit from the tree, but it's better that we try to grow the trees and then we will get the fruits all the time. And the trees is actually the culture. But Prabhupada, he wanted us to know what is a fruit. So he actually gave us the fruit of the fruit from the tree, which did wonders for us, because then now we are trying to always have that fruit through hearing and chanting. But for other people, that might take a longer time. But we don't have, even in our ISKCON movement, we are concerned with productivity, we are concerned with so many other things, because it is a young movement. And we are concerned with advancing the cause of Krishna consciousness, not so much long-term, but short-term. And therefore, yes, we overlook many of these things. We don't have a system where our leaders are truly accountable. They're accountable to themselves. And when it comes to really some big problems, then they're really accountable. When the rotten egg hits the fan, then actually it spreads everywhere. Then actually we try to become accountable, because we don't have. I had a talk. I mean, I'm going to be very candid. I had a talk with one very nice lady who came to our house here a couple of months back, and she was in charge of child protection. But now she is in charge of another angle called leadership abuse. So if leaders behave wrongly, they have to be brought to task. Every system, every governance system has check and balances. Every governance system has check and balances, because when you have power, we have responsibilities. But when did we have like checks and balances sorted out? Because we don't. Because we are a Krishna conscious society. We are trying to preach Krishna consciousness. We are trying to bring that message to the wider world and to our lives. And we don't have much thought about what kind of cultural situation we can create so everyone can grow in it nicely. So obviously we're going to have issues, and these issues are not going to finish in our lifetimes. And we've all been sometimes victim and sometimes perpetrators of this kind of situations, because that's just the way things are. But doesn't mean to say that in the near future, or in the not so distant future, something's going to be brought up by the thinkers, by the leaders, by the decision makers, where we can have more accountability from everyone, because that's definitely not there. So, but what can you do? We are pressed for pushing Krishna consciousness. It's a very honest and candid answer. I hope that I'm not here to judge anyone, but this is just the way things are. So hopefully, obviously, there are many devotees who are very clear-headed thinkers, study Shastra, their Brahminical inclinations, and they will bring solutions. But I don't think we will. It's good to talk, but it's also good to be patient, because I think the heart and the minds of the devotees in the right place, but we are operating in an environment that's sometimes very harsh, and sometimes it imposes its own value system upon our Krishna conscious value systems. And sometimes it's not so easy to operate and try to become mainstream, try to become mainstream, and without having to deal with our own. Look at the Christian church. I mean, you all know, you've been part of the Christian church, many of you, and you've been preachers and teachers, just like the Christian church in the West, in Africa, in West Africa, and so on. In the West, they have had 2,000 years of history, but it's still, in terms of the philosophy, they are actually failing. But they have even now a very big cultural setup, environmental, an ecosystem that's working. And Prabhupada said they're very nicely organized. We should look at how they operate. So we don't have a proper system of accountability and governance. Like, our GBC is ultimate managing authority, but that doesn't mean very much a lot of times. But for preaching, it means a lot. Yeah. But culturally, socially, it doesn't mean very much. Because how I read my life at my home and what I'm talking here and the books I'm reading and this and that, it's my allegiance to Srila Prabhupada and to my authorities, right? So that is something that's going to be worked out, in a societal way. Yeah. And I think that you all know that. I cannot pronounce anything better than that.
Prabhupada, thank you. You said enough, and I truly appreciate the answer you gave. Thank you so much. But when you were reading about, the first sentence of the text we read today, how this Brahmin son was very powerful. And when you were describing that, you were talking about this guy, even though Shringi, he was powerful because he had been brought up as a brahmachari. He had been trained, but he did not have the tolerance. He did not have the buddhi, the intelligence. And that reminded me of a model that I saw some time ago. It was a Toyota, the vehicle Toyota, their ad. And the ad reads that power without control is danger, which I find it very interesting because, all over the world, everybody believes that Toyotas are very good cars. So one may think that simply because he's riding in a good car, he can do anything and whatever. But they reminded us that even with all this power, if you do not have control, there is danger. So the question I have in that regard is, should one learn to exercise control before he does anything to become powerful? Or when one becomes powerful, he can now have control over the power? Which comes first? Or do the two come simultaneously? Or one has to consciously struggle to achieve one and the other one follows?
I think one has to learn to control his senses. That was what the insult Prahlad Maharaj gave to his father. He said, my dear father, the best of demons. And he addressed him very nicely. And then he said to him, you can't do anything because you can't even control your senses. So at least we have one incredibly powerful thing in our movement is our devotees are taught this. Not to forget Krishna means actually to control our senses. Because when we don't control our senses, we forget Krishna momentarily, all that be it, right? So when someone actually controls his senses, then actually they will become truly powerful. So that other power that we talked about, gaining, attaining power, this is more for the yogis or this is more for the karmis. They want to have power. We want to have simple power of surrender to Krishna and our senses are controlled. So that other thing is not our domain. Our domain is we become simply powerful in service of Krishna by controlling our senses. Otherwise, we are competing with the Hiranyakshas and Hiranyakashipus. We don't want to do that. We want to be surrendered souls to control our senses for the pleasure of Krishna. That's how we get our power from. Prabhupada was extremely powerful, not because he wanted to wield so much power, because he was speaking on behalf of Krishna and he had his mind and senses firmly under control by being in Krishna Bhakti.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you for spending so much time with us today. I have talked a lot, so I expect somebody else to speak, please.
Yes, I'd like to hear from somebody else.
Yes, please.
Hare Krishna,
Sati,
Sati.
yes. Hare Krishna.
Hare,
Please unmute.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, Mataji Sati.
Sati, yes, please.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Please somehow be since I'll go show Prabhupada go Vaishnava. I wanted to ask because the biggest problem, like I'm staying in a temple now in a community, and my hardest thing is just getting along with devotees, I guess. Like I don't feel, it's been like years since I lived in a community. I lived in Africa for many years and I felt very strong there and I was able to coincide with devotees very well. But I was out of a community for almost 2 years now, and I'm back living in one with my husband. And I just feel like I'm in the Pujari department and I often feel like I'm taken advantage of, or like I do services for people they don't appreciate, or I like try to help out, or just, and my husband's been trying to teach me like to not to expect to them to do something back for me or to expect to appreciate it. But I wonder sometimes about get discouraged. I just wonder how to handle all these like little dealings with devotees. I guess like I've been reading and trying like and hearing things here and there, like learning, oh, that's not so important, whether you feel this way or that way, like those feelings like come and go and they're not so important to pay attention to. But I'm just wondering like advice you have or things you have in that department, because that like seems to be the thing where I have like the most trouble with as far as like being back in a community again after I haven't been in one for so long.
You know, when they asked Srila Prabhupada, it was something to do with Mother Yamuna, and someone had said about her whether she has association or not, and she was only having the friendship and association of I forgot the lady that was with her till the last. And Prabhupada answered, he said, whether you have association of two people, it's not a question of numbers. You may be with 2 persons and you may have nice association, and you may be with 200 persons and it may not be nice association, even though they may be all devotees. Because generally this is, I'm like, sometimes we go to a Sunday program, and this is something that's very common here in Mauritius. You have a Sunday program and it's like a social gathering, and everyone meets and everyone talks about everything else, and then no one listens to the class, and then everyone waits for the feast. But if you and at other times, Mataji, you can just have one person at your home, and you're so inspired talking about Srila Prabhupada and talking about Krishna that you just feel like you completely enlivened, or you get a phone call from one of your good friends and you just keep talking about Prabhupada, talking about what you read, talking about Bhagavad Gita, and then after that you feel so enlivened. My point is this, I mean, my humble experience is I started my Krishna conscious career being an outside devotee, then I joined for a while, and then I've been mostly outside, is this: you have to seek your association wisely. That's where it all comes from. I think it's not a question of just being in a community, and if the community is, because Sanatana Goswami said you have to associate with like-minded devotees. So the very principle of association is you have to find 1 or 2 friends who are on the same wavelength as you, and especially being on the same wavelength is one thing, but then being interested to advance in Krishna consciousness and spend time talking about Krishna and remembering Krishna, which is the essence of spiritual life. So it's not always just a community. You know, you have a large community here, but I have maybe 3, 4, 5 friends who really matter to me. And I'm all right with everyone else, but these 3, 4, 5 friends, they uplift me. We talk about Krishna, we read Gita, we try to practice Krishna consciousness when we meet. Or there's one friend, one of my friends is in Delhi, and we don't talk, we don't send messages, we don't do any of these things. But every 6 weeks or 2 months, we have 2 hours talk on the WhatsApp. That's all. And you know, he will send a message, we will miss, and then it's okay, we'll talk. And then we start talking, and it's all about trying to share our experiences in Krishna consciousness, all positive things. So, and we do that we've been doing that for maybe 20 years, 15 years. So you just need to get 1 or 2 persons in your close environment, in your close circle, who actually, you know, will uplift you and you uplift them, because you obviously have a lot to offer as well. So that we need to find. And this is what you call association. You reject things that are unfavorable and accept things that are favorable. So favorable association, positive association, and then everything will come from there. I think like that. So I hope that is of any help to you, Mother.
Thank you. That's very nice. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. See, those of you who do not know Shri Advaita Krishna Prabhu that much, he is naturally a counselor. He counseled me once, a long time ago in Ghana, and that encounter I had with him has been staying with me till now, and probably till I drop this body. So we may not bring personal issues, but general issues can be very much well addressed by Prabhuji, especially on this platform. The personal ones may not be very much encouraged.
Thank you for your kind comments.
Yeah, but in fact, you reminded me of my Gurudev, because the question I asked and the way you answered it, you reminded me of my Gurudev, because Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, sometimes people will ask him some bogus, useless questions, but yet he finds a way to polish the question and answer it so beautifully, So my question wasn't a very good, nice question, but you found a way to answer it in such a way that I believe everyone listening and whoever will watch this later on will benefit from the answer you gave. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
So the Hari Chakra Prabhu and also
yes,
the devotee who is driving wanted to ask. Just let's get to that.
I think we'll go to Govinda first, because he wanted to ask. Govinda Prabhu, please unmute.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Gurudev and Srila Prabhupada. And all glories to you all. I had one question and one comment, but I think that question has already been answered, as if Prabhu is reading my mind and heart. So he has answered that question. So I may not ask that question, but I do appreciate your presentation today. The earlier on in your preaching, you were emphasizing so much on hearing, hearing. And that has reminded me of a story that I heard about a devotee who was really a pilot. And this person will always go for Bhagavatam class. So he will go and hear the Bhagavatam and come back. He was doing that back and forth. And one day as he was going, he was about to go, the pilot said, I have something to tell you. So he asked the pilot, what is it? And the pilot said, can you please ask the speaker to tell you and let me know
we lost you. Okay, he may be driving in some a strange area. We lost him.
I think we lost his network.
Anyway, yeah.
So Hari Chakra Prabhu, you can
Hari Chakra
come
Prabhu,
in.
yes.
You can unmute for now, and then maybe afterwards get given back. Hari Chakra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, go ahead, Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you very much for your class. I actually have assimilated a lot. And Thank you very much. I was just trying to buttress the answer that you gave to Sir Dave about the question of who initiate cases. And then you were mentioning that Prakriti actually makes sure it happens. Because in the Ghanaian culture in Africa, like especially in Ghana, that I know, like if somebody says a curse and they use an element whilst pronouncing the curse, it is known in the culture that the curse happens instantly. That like someone wants to curse you and the person just get like a cup of water, and whilst pouring the water down, he initiates the curse. It happens. And that one, when it happens like that, and if even they want to reverse the curse, they have to go through a lot. But if the person just says the curse verbally without the help of any element, then sometimes it happens, but usually it doesn't even, nothing even happens. So yeah, I greatly appreciate that answer that you gave. It's drawn my attention to, because I've known all this thing in our culture for a long time, but immediately you said that Prakriti initiates, it draws my whole attention, and it has brought me home to everything that I've known for all this while. So thank you very much for.
You remember early days when you were in the temple, Srivas Prabhu might recall. We used to have a talk. We used to have something we used to say. Oh, Prabhu, he's under the mode. Srivas Prabhu, can you remember that? Every time something happened, we would say, oh, he's under the modes. He's under the modes, right? Those who lived in the ashram, you know that. We used to say that. Oh, don't worry about him. He's under the mode. But it's a fact. It's a fact. So we've forgotten that everything is under the modes.
Yeah.
So, instead of blaming and shaming, we should know it is under the modes.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Govinda, you back?
Yeah, I'm back. I'm so sorry. Somebody called to interrupt.
Okay, we will have the last comment from you. Go on.
Yeah.
Last comment.
So, so this pilot, the pilot asked the owner, please, can you ask the speaker of the Bhagavatam to tell me how I can escape from this cage? So this man went to the class, and the question time, he asked the speaker this question. My pilot said I should ask you how he can escape. So as soon as he asked the question, the speaker fell down. She collapsed. And they had to pour water on him, through water here and there. He was dying. And at a point, he woke up. He get up. And so the speaker, the questionnaire said, oh, I think I asked you a wrong question. I just asked you a question and you fell and about to die. Why did you do that? I was afraid, if I go back, how am I going to tell the pilot what happened?
Plaza is safe for the.
So the speaker said, okay, but when you go back, tell the pilot that you asked a question and this is what happened. And so the questionnaire asked him again, but how can this pilot understand? And the speaker said, don't worry, you just go and tell him. You understand? So he went back and he told the pilot, yeah, I asked you a question. But as soon as I asked the question, the speaker fell down and was about to die. He collapsed. He was dying. And so as soon as he finished giving the answer, the pilot also fell. The pilot also fell in his cage. And it's like dying in the cage. And he fell flat, like dead. So this man took the dead pilot from the cage. And then he was so worried, turning the pilot here and there. And as he was doing that, this fellow flew away.
Mm.
He was not dead. He pretended to be dead. So he flew away. So when that question was asked to the questionnaire allegorically gave the answer to the questionnaire to be given to the pilot, knowing that the pilot will understand. So when he told the pilot that when I asked the question, this is what happened, then the pilot immediately got the answer. And so he followed the same step by falling in his cage like dead, and so that the owner would take him out of the cage, and that he was able to fly away.
Mm.
So when you were speaking, I was thinking, oh yes, Prabhu, you are right. Bhagavatam is so powerful that if you take one word, just one word, if you listen attentively from the speaker, I get only one word and try to live by that one word, we can be escaped from this our cage.
Yeah.
The soul is imprisoned in this physical body as a cage and looking for an opportunity to run away, just like that pilot. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Very nice.
Thank you so much. Actually, it's the whole process of Srimad Bhagavatam is joyful when you sit with devotees and we talk and hear. And Prabhupada instituted this in our movement. And the first time he gave that instructions was actually in 1971, when Srila Prabhupada was not well and he had to go back to India, and then he was leaving. And in Los Angeles, everyone was crying and said, what are we going to do? He said, just like what we've been doing. And he said, you should get one, the senior person should speak and everyone should bring their points and discuss. And he said, but who? He said, you know, the one who was more senior among you. So this principle, and in that chapter, in that pastime I read, Prabhupada quoted, Dadati pratigrinati guyamakyati prichati. Dadati pratigrinati guyamakyati prichati bhukte bhujayate cheva sadvidi priti lakshana. The 6 symptoms of loving exchange, and Dadati pratigrinati means actually what we are doing. It's we're bringing our points together and we are discussing, and maybe one of us can lead the class, but then everyone else will speak and bring the points up. And this is actually developing love in Krishna consciousness. So I think that's a very important thing. And any yatra who doesn't practice this is going to go through many intense difficulties and then come back to doing this. Because that's Prabhupada's edict. And he started that in 1971 when he was going to Prabhupada Amrita, and he said, do this. And then they would do, the devotees would do. And they were inexperienced, but they would do. So, you know, this is a very nice platform to, I'm just sad that I have so other engagements, and sometimes I feel like coming in when devotees are speaking, and I listen to the classes afterwards, but sometimes I'm busy because Tuesday I'm busy, Thursdays I'm busy, Friday I'm busy, Saturday, Sunday, Thursday. So just having classes and talks. And so, yeah, it's nice that devotees come together. And I think also that you should all come together no matter who's speaking. No matter who's speaking. And if the person is not so adept at speaking, then you should help. Because that's the Dati Pratigrinati. It's a loving exchange. It's not someone big hotshot is giving talk. I understood that some years back when I read that. The Dati Pratigrinati. This is our forum of revealing our mind, talking about what do we reveal our mind for? How we're remembering Krishna and how we're not remembering Krishna. What helps us to remember Krishna, what doesn't help us to. That's what we're doing, and how we can enhance. So that's, I think, is Bhagavatam class. So thank you so much for having me, giving me the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. You know, kids love ice cream, you know. If you were ice cream, we would just keep you here forever, you know. Yeah. We'll be enjoying like a vanilla ice cream.
Not very much. I'll probably, you know, what do you call
no problem.
In the heat, in the Ghana heat.
Melt.
Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Thank you so much. So Dear devotees, I think Prabhuji, it's quite late, Prabhuji's time. But,
yes, it's very late.
Yes, it's quite late.
quite
Thank
late.
you so much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Vanchakal Patarvyasya Kripastina Vivacha Patiram
Prabhuji, hold on. We're going to ask all the devotees to kindly unmute, and then we chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, please. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Thank you.
All gratitude, praise Advaita Krishna Prabhu ki jai.